Good morning. Welcome to morning meditation today. I had someone come up to me after Mass today, which always makes you feel well, all right, something I said, someone listened to. And that was, they said, I've started to listen to Advent music instead of Christmas music, and I like it. And so we will start off with a little O Come Divine Messiah, short little song, but we'll begin with that. But I think the lyrics to this song, one of the things is, about Christmas music, of course, we're celebrating the child. But in the Advent music, we get this anticipation. I did this in my daily Mass homily yesterday. The old ketchup commercial where the little kid's hitting the bottle and singing, "Anticipation is making me wait." And so we have this, the season is about anticipating. We get the hamburger at Christmas time, but for this time, we're just waiting for the ketchup to come out of the bottle. I don't know if that's a very good analogy or not, but this is the thing that, and virtually everyone in Daily Mass yesterday was over 50 years old, so everyone was shaking their head, remembering this commercial, right? All right, let's try a little O Come Divine Messiah after that. That'll get us going a little bit this morning. The other thing that I just figured out today, right? I've been doing this for 20 years or so, this Advent thing as a priest, and another 10 years before that, I was going to daily Mass pretty much every day. Thus the word, right? Going every day, daily Mass. Okay, sorry about that. That the normal weekday Mass lectionary is done semi-continuous. In other words, we'll take Paul's gospel or Paul's letter to the Romans, and we'll take 5 days of that. And so the gospel, and we go through all three gospels. I shouldn't say all three because there's four, but Matthew, Mark, Luke. John gets shoved in all over the place, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, we go through them fairly semi-continuously. So the first reading and the gospel do not normally match up. But for Advent, the lectionary designers gave us readings to match up. And it hit me this morning because two themes were very clear in, there was, of course, the feeding. There were a couple themes, but there was the feeding, but then also on this mountain. And I commented this morning in my homily about how normally in the funeral reading, we don't get on this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples a feast of rich food and choice wines, juicy rich foods and pure choice wines. Normally we start with, on this mountain, the Lord will destroy the veil that veils all people. So clearly on the mountain is a theme. We think about famous mountains. Noah's Ark, of course, ends up on the mountain, Mount Ararat, for those who remember that. And then Elijah takes on the priests of Baal on Mount Carmel, the place where the Carmelites will come from. Moses, of course, gets the Ten Commandments and sees the burning bush on Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai. Yes, Mount Sinai. And then Mount Zion, that's Jerusalem. That's the Temple Mount. And so we kind of got these famous mountains. But Our reading today wasn't that concerned about which mountain it was, neither of them. It's just on this mountain, the Lord of hosts. This might be referring to Mount Zion, right? It might be, but not necessarily. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples. On this mountain, the Lord will destroy the veil that veils all peoples. And then in our gospel today, at that time, Jesus walked by the Sea of Galilee, went up on the mountain, and sat down there. If you'll remember this too, Jesus does the same thing in Matthew's gospel when he gives the Sermon on the Mount. He goes up the mountain and sits down, and the people gather around him. And then, of course, on this mountaintop, my heart is moved with pity for the crowd. They have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry. And so we have this rich meal. And at the end of it, St. Matthew comments, all were satisfied. We did this a couple months ago. We had this in our Sunday lectionary, this reading. And so we preached on this 7 and the few fish. And so gave them to the disciples, who in turn gave them to the crowds. So wanted to take a look today at the mountains. Of course, that place of prayer, that place of being close to God. Truly I say to you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. And nothing will be impossible to you. This is an Old Testament from Nahum, prophet Nahum. The mountains quake before him, and the hills melt away. The earth trembles at his presence, the world and all who live in it. This is echoed in the psalm. The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of all the earth. The heavens proclaim the Lord's righteousness. All peoples see the Lord's glory. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. Habakkuk had a great sense of the awe of the Lord. It was kind of a no-compromising kind of prophet. When the Lord stops, the earth shakes. When the Lord looks, the nations tremble. The Lord shatters the everlasting mountains and levels the eternal hills. The Lord is the eternal one. Great stuff by Habakkuk there. Shatters the everlasting mountains. There is only one eternal one. Not in the mountains or the hills, but the Lord. In Isaiah, we get this Advent theme. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down. That the mountains would tremble before you, as when fire sets twigs ablaze and causes water to boil. Come down to make your name known to your enemies. Cause the nations to quake before you. Psalm 90, a prayer of Moses, the man of God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or before you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Isaiah 54. For the mountains may be removed, and the hills may shake, but my loving kindness will not be removed from you, and my covenant of peace will not be shaken, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. Then we get kind of the more peaceful readings about the mountains being places of prayer. One day, soon afterwards, this is Luke's gospel, Jesus went up on a mountain to pray, and he prayed to God all night. This is Matthew's gospel. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And then the great scene in Exodus. This is Mount Sinai. Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. When the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him with thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. You see, the Lord comes on the mountain in fire, and I've talked about this, that this is the coming of the Lord. At Pentecost, when the Lord comes, the fire comes to rest, the tongues as a fire comes to rest on each of them. And so that here it just rests on the mountain, and Moses goes up alone. But on Pentecost, the fire comes on each of them. All right, Genesis 8. What's this going to be about? In the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested on the mountain of Ararat. You don't have to remember that. Oh, there is one more famous mountain. I don't know if they're going to give us that passage. One of my favorite. Moses dies on Mount Nebo with his eyes on dim and his vigor unabated, I think is the line. That's what they're going to put on my tombstone. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is this you, you troubler of Israel? I have not troubled Israel, but you and your fathers have, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord. What does a prophet do? Well, calls kings to justice. You will follow the Baals. Now then, send and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel with 450 prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent a message among all the sons, prophets, together at Mount Carmel. Elijah came to the people and said, "How long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, the god of stuff, is God, then follow that God." But the people did not answer a word. And then, of course, the fire comes down. That's on Mount Carmel. The Carmelites have their Sermon on the Mount we have talked about. They give us a bonus one, and our time is expired, so we'll take this bonus passage. The mountains shall bring peace to the people, and the little hills by righteousness. That's Psalm 72. All right, thanks for joining us today for this mountaintop experience. Well, maybe not so much, but it's good to have you. Blessing. We'll continue to explore these themes that we are given in our daily readings. Tomorrow we have St. Francis Xavier, the great St. Francis Xavier, who baptized thousands. As we come before the Lord today, we give thanks to God for a chance to hear his word, for a chance to see the glory of the Lord, for the chance to meditate on the power and grace of God. Thank you for joining us today. May you be enlightened and enlivened in God's grace and spirit this day. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.